Dan and Ben. A story by Liam and Sammy. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon. School had just let out, and Ben Ostermule was walking home. Alone like always, he hung his head down and started his familiar route. He heard a car approach him from behind and come to a stop. He turned around and recognized the car. The window rolled down, revealing the face of Dan Dugo. "Want a ride?" Dan asked, a grin growing on his face. His eyebrows, like two fuzzy caterpillars, raised on his forehead, radiating a welcoming glow on his face. "Sure," Ben said, as he trotted to Dan's car. A warm sense of happiness surged through Ben's chest.
He hated walking home, he thought. As he got in the car, he thanked Dan. Dan smiled again and drove. Ben began to wonder if he had come off as too eager to see him. He shrugged it off. As he reached for his backpack, his hand brushed against Dan's. Ben blushed a little, wondering if Dan had even noticed. He noticed then how soft Dan's feminine hands were. He walked into his house and went up the stairs to his room. He laid his coat on his bed and turned on his TV. As he sat on his bed, he noticed a familiar scent. He picked up his jacket, bringing it to his face. He noticed the scent of Dan's cologne on his jacket. He held it in his hands.
Briefly, staring at the pattern in the fabric, he brought it to his face one more time, covering his face entirely, his arms shaking from the intensity. As he inhaled as much as he could until his lungs hurt, and he threw his jacket into the corner of his room. The next day, as Ben walked home from school, he kept looking over his shoulder. But it wasn't raining that day. When he got home, he was anxious and restless. He had been like that all day. He kept going in and out of the bathroom, just staring at his reflection in the mirror. He figured he would text Dan to hang out. He had before, without much thought, but this time he was nervous. He had to write it a few times to get the text just right, and after he sent it, he stared at his blank phone screen.
He stared at his phone with a dull and blank expression, much like his life. As soon as Ben's phone lightly vibrated in his
Sweaty,
nervous grasp, his face lit up. Dan had said, "Okay." Ben jumped in the air, smiling uncontrollably. As Ben hooked the jacket over his arms, he walked out into the cold afternoon and started his walk to Dan's house.
Ben walked steadily down the sidewalk, a moist
Sweat
growing on his forehead. He smirked, giving a half grin, imagining Dan in his mind. Ben grew more and more nervous until he was at Dan's door, shaking. Ben noticed Dan in the window, looking out at him, motioning for him to come in. Ben walked shyly through the door, avoiding eye contact. Dan was wearing basketball shorts and a loose-fitting tank top that clearly showed off his well-toned body. Dan's face was slightly flushed. Ben started walking towards Dan, who was almost oblivious to his presence, as he was preoccupied with his phone. "Take your shoes off," Dan said, as he walked towards his room. Keeping a distance behind him, Ben's uncomfortability grew, as did the erection in his pants. The afternoon proceeded, Ben anxious as ever. Dan, at first, seemed oblivious to Ben's blatant playfulness, but eventually, he started to get the feeling that Ben was trying to impress him. Ben was none the wiser. Ben continued with his childish playfulness, which later became almost obvious sexual advances. Dan became slightly concerned. Ben's persistent optimism and the way he always tried to touch Dan brought Dan to a breaking point. I have to eat dinner. I'll see you later," Dan said. At this point, Ben had completely shut down.
Ben's jaw hung open, his eyes widened. To save himself from further embarrassment, he insulted Dan. I can't fucking do this. He commenced with a barrage of homophobic remarks as he stormed out of Dan's house. Dan closing the door behind him. As the door closed, Ben was instantly consumed by remorse. He turned around, lurching. You do it.
Lurching at his front door, ringing the doorbell. No answer. He gripped the door handle, trying to turn it, but to no avail. It was locked. Ben just stood there, the door handle tight in his fist, turning white from the grip. Hot tears streamed down his cheeks, burning his eyes. He turned around and started home. He did nothing all weekend. On the verge of psychopathic, he had regressed into a vegetative state, wallowing in pity and his own fluids.